Afternoon, and welcome to the Scottsdale Development Review Board public meeting for November 16th, 2023. The purpose of the Development Review Board is to maintain the quality of development in Scottsdale by reviewing all of the design aspects of a proposed development and the relationship of its design components to the surrounding environment and community. The board also reviews all preliminary plats for subdivisions to assure conformance to policies and ordinance requirements. The agenda consists of the roll call, public comment on non-agendized items, the administrative report, minutes approval of the prior meeting, and action items. A roll call vote will be taken after each item's motion. So, our first item is the roll call. Can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Durham.
Here.
Vice Chair Brandt.
Here.
Board Member Joyner.
Here.
Board Member Craig.
Here.
Board Member Faki.
Here.
Board Member Mason.
Here.
Commissioner Ertel.
Here.
All present. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is public comment on non-agendized items. I don't think we have any, do we? All right. Thank you. Let's move on to the administrative report then.
Thank you, Councilmember Durham. Good afternoon to you and members of the board. A few items today just to make note of. The first is I want to let you know that there's an upcoming review by the audit committee, a sunset review of the DRB. This is a typical occurrence that happens every 3 years. A subcommittee of the council makes up the audit committee, and they review all boards and commissions every 3 years to evaluate whether the commission is serving its intended purpose and whether it will continue to serve that purpose. There is staff in attendance. I will be in attendance to answer any questions for the board, but typically there aren't any. It's something like the Development Review Board, which obviously the community thinks highly of and is an important function of the community. Usually there's really no questions, but the audit committee makes a recommendation after that hearing to City Council on whether to terminate the board or commission under review or continue to have that board function. So just want to let you know that's happening in January, late January, so I will give you an update to the board post that subcommittee. Also, we will be having a meeting on 12/7. We have several cases for you to hear on that meeting. So hopefully we'll see you, a lot of you there. That's because Councilmember Durham and Commissioner Ertel, you're ending your term with us, this rotation anyway, with this meeting. We want to thank you for that, for your 3 months with us, but we'll see you again, I'm sure, shortly. So thanks again for that, and that concludes my administrative report.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the October 8th to October 19th 2023 Development Review Board regular meeting minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes? Or are there any corrections?
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the October 19th 2023 Development Review Board regular meeting minutes. Can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Durham.
Yes.
Vice Chair Brandt.
Yes.
Board Member Joyner.
Yes.
Board Member Craig.
Yes.
Board Member Faki.
Yes.
Board Member Mason.
Yes.
Commissioner Ertel.
Yes.
Minutes approved. Thank you.
Thank you. The motion to approve the minutes of October 19th, 2023 passes. The first item on our regular agenda is 30-DR-2019, number 2, the Caesars Republic, Scottsdale. We have 2 requests for public comment. Do those go before or after our presentations?
Councilmember Durham, would be typically after staff presentation.
That's what I thought. Can we proceed with staff presentation?
Real quickly, Councilmember Durham, I also want to note Vice Chair Brand is recusing on this item.
Yes, thank you.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Durham, Commissioner Ertel, and Development Review Board members. My name is Brian Clough. I'm with the city's current planning department, and I'll be giving you an overview of the applicant's request this afternoon with regard to 30 DR 2019 number 2. So specifically this afternoon, the applicant's request is for approval of revisions to the previously approved building elevations by the Development Review Board, requesting to remove the extended slab edges on all floors of the building. This is for the Caesars Hotel, which is an 11-story hotel on approximately 1.6 acres. The subject site highlighted in yellow here is on the Fashion Square Mall property, south of Highland Road. You can see it's just on the north side of the mall there, and west of Scottsdale Road. A closer look at the site here, you can see it's at Highland and Goldwater as Highland curves around heading eastward. In this aerial bird's eye view here, you can actually see the hotel during the phase of construction at the time. The Development Review Board was originally approved November of 2019 for the building. Permits were issued and construction was started in early 22. The building now is mostly complete. They're working on the interior build out and finishing up the site work around the property. So this here is a look at the building elevations that were originally approved by the Development Review Board. I'm not going to show all the sides of the building. This is the north side of the building, which the feature that we're talking about, and I have some other exhibits that'll show it a little bit more clearly too. At this scale, it's kind of hard to see, but the features we're talking about are these slab extensions that extend out 20 inches from each of the floor plates on the building. And this, to the right-hand side here, is a blow-up of kind of that portion of the wall, so you can see those slab edges. Those 20-inch slabs would have provided shading for the facade, as well as depth and character to the building. That slab edge detail was also included in the construction documents that were approved by the city for the permits that were issued. And then here would be that same north elevation with the slab edges removed. This is what the applicant would be requesting approval for this afternoon. So to give you a better idea of the design of those slab edges, this is one of the perspective renderings that was approved by the Development Review Board during that original approval in 2019. So three-dimensionally, you could see a little bit more those slab edges and how they were oriented and designed into the building there. And that's just another angle of the approved building perspectives. So this is a photo of the building as it exists today. So you can see the slab edges are not part of the building design. This would be the west-facing building elevation. And then another angle from the northern side. This would be from the Highland Road perspective. So this is a side-by-side before and after, the approved on the left and the existing building as constructed on the right, as well as a detail of what that slab edge looked like with the 20 inches originally and the 3 inches as constructed. So just to give a little bit more background as to kind of how the construction and reviews transpired through the process. Permits were issued, as I mentioned, with the slab edges included in that design. The developer started construction and was moving forward. Somewhere along that process, it was determined that the slab edges needed to be removed from the construction by the design team. I'll allow them to provide more detail on that. The developer did submit revisions to the city for review of those slab edge removals and revision to the approved construction documents. At that time, construction was already underway. Staff reviewed those documents and identified that removal of those slab extensions was not consistent with the Development Review Board approval, and we had design concerns with it. So at that time, there were already multiple floors poured without the slab extension. So staff started conversations with the design team suggesting possible retrofit options where something may be able to add it onto the slabs to achieve a similar character, depth, and shading of the facade. So several months after that, staff was working with the development team on those possible retrofit options. And as the developer looked into those options, they came across other challenges associated with those retrofit options and decided that they wanted to request from the Development Review Board revisions to the building elevations. So that's where we are today. And that concludes staff's presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have for staff. And the applicant team is also here with a presentation. Thank you.
You mentioned that part of the function of these is shade, sorry. What are they going to shade exactly? Because I would presume that these windows are heavily smoked or darkened or whatever. You don't want the Arizona sun shining directly in your room. So what's the functional shade that's provided by these?
Sure. Thank you, Councilman, for the question. There's multiple components to it. Shading is one of them. And obviously, there's a lot of glass on the facade. So shading, although you're correct with the construction and code requirements today for glass facades, the solar reflectivity and heat gain coefficients and everything with the glass storefronts that are used today are very good, and there's not a whole lot of heat gain that comes through those glasses with the reflectivity and everything. Part of it with the overhang and shading the glass facade does help reduce reflection off the building face that may affect other properties in the area. Also, beyond shading, it does add that depth and additional character from a design perspective to the building design.
Are there any other functional, are there any other functions of the ledges that would be missed by deleting them?
Councilman, from a design perspective, if Mr. Carr has any other suggestions along those lines, off the top of my head, those are what come to mind.
All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Durham, members of the board, before we begin and you start your clock, this may take a little bit longer than 10 minutes. I will try hard to get through it, but there's some history I think that would be beneficial to the board to be aware of as you consider this, this decision. Let me give me a second here. So John Berry, 6750 East Camelback Road in Scottsdale. And as always, we appreciate the staff presentation and history. We also appreciate their recommendation for approval of our request. A little bit of background on this hotel might be beneficial, and I apologize for the Elmo making this all appear so dark. Obviously, that's not the appropriate design of or color of the building, but a little bit of background. When this was approved in 2009, we were filled with hope that we would proceed very quickly and open this hotel. For obvious reasons in terms of the economic impact to the city. And we were on a fast track to proceed, but unfortunately COVID intervened and it took 4 more years before we could be at this step. We're excited about opening on March 1st. There is a great deal of interest and strong bookings. Rooms in the high season are going from $600 to $3,000 a night. There's a lot of excitement in the community about the 2 celebrity chef restaurants by Giada. This project will achieve what the city originally hoped for when they zoned this project, which is to enhance our tourism base, which keeps our taxes low and our quality of life high. Also, this $111 million project has generated substantial construction tax so far and will generate even significant amounts in bed tax and in sales tax. Now, the team that was involved in this project is the owner, Rick Huffman, with HCW. He's based out of Branson, Missouri, but he does have a home in the area. The architects are out of Springfield, Missouri. They do not have a local office or presence. Our structural engineer from the beginning on this is a company called PK Associates here in Scottsdale. Jack Kohler, who's been in that industry for 31 years. Now, before I go into some additional detail, I think some additional background might be helpful. This is not a situation where someone is asking for forgiveness rather than permission. When they proceeded, they did so in good faith, and on their own volition, they filed the application with the city to make these changes. It's important that you understand that this was the only submittal to the city to make changes to this facade. So reducing costs in a construction project is always a good thing. It's always a good thing. But while this change did produce in an $111 million project, $158,000 in savings, that clearly was not the motivating factor, because everything you see on these, as this was constructed, is in conformance with the approved DRB from 4 years ago. There have been no changes to the materials, the glass, or anything else associated with this facade. They made one requested change, and it was these slabs that you're considering today. Everything you see here is in full accordance with the materials boards submitted as part of DRB. Staff showed you this graphic, and I just want to talk a little bit about this. On the left, and again, these colors are because of the reproduction, of the quality of the reproduction. Again, this side is in full compliance with the approval back in 2009. But this is the cross-section of the slab that we're talking about. So this is the window wall above and below the slab, and here's the projection from the window wall. This would be the floor of the room above and the ceiling of the room below. And you can see this projection of the concrete slab away from the window. What was built was 3 inches, which is in conformance with the city's code. Now, why did we ask to do this? Why did we file our request and application with the city to reduce that from 17 inches to 3 inches? Well, the team's expert analysis and team, including the architect, the structural engineer, and Mr. Huffman's own experience with hotels that he owns, prompted them and motivated them and compelled them to make this change. What was that analysis from folks on the team, including the experts? Well, the factors in filing that application in May to reduce the size of the concrete slab, an overwhelming was the practical, real-world implications of experience that Mr. Huffman has had with an existing hotel in Branson, Missouri, which included concerns about water damming and leakage, cracks and deterioration, and performing ongoing maintenance with that. This contractor, unwilling to guarantee installation for water seepage and mold concerns, was one of the major factors because the contractor would not guarantee their work. This is the hotel in Branson, Missouri that Mr. Huffman built some years ago. It's the Branson Convention Center Hilton. This has incorporated into it call it the 3-inch version that you're considering, and the larger concrete slabs that stick out along the building. Looks very familiar. Mr. Huffman would tell you that they've had real problems with that in terms of the cracking of the concrete and other issues associated with it that I just listed. Now, there were additional factors associated with filing this application with the city. Again, we did not build all of this and then say, gosh, I hope nobody catches us, and then we got caught, and then we're here. We actually played by the rules. We followed the process and submitted the application. One of the major issues, and no pun intended, but some of you may think this issue is for the birds, but this is a serious issue. These 17-inch ledges create ledges for bird congregation and accumulation of bird excrement. That's a kind way of saying pigeons and birds like this area, and they do their business on the ledge. Additionally, these 17-inch ledges end up accumulating debris during dust storms. And then when the wind comes back again another time, debris falls off those, and that becomes a potential hazard. There's also a visual nuisance for room guests when they look out their window and they see the happy birds outside, when you're paying $600 to $3,000 a night for a room that was not included in the Yelp reviews. That's not something that you want. Is this really a serious problem for hotels? This is an article from Hotel Management Magazine back in June of 2020. And the title of the article is Why Hotels Need to Pay Attention to Birds. And here's some quotes out of it. Birds can cause real damage to both buildings and people. Much of the threat is the bird's waste, which is caustic enough to destroy concrete and steel over time and can spread diseases like histoplasmosis and salmonella as it dries. Birds are attracted to high areas like ledges because it helps them avoid non-avian predators. Birds' attraction to ledges and hard-to-reach areas makes cleaning difficult. And with a hotel where you've got outdoor dining out there, it's an enhanced difficulty, particularly for hotels. Why is this such an interesting concern for hotels? I hope nobody had lunch recently, but this is what a ledge looks like when birds make it their home. This is looking from inside a building outside to a ledge, and this is the view that for $600 a night you too could have with these ledges. Now, is it possible to clean these and take care of these? Sure it is, but it's also a maintenance nightmare because birds don't follow a routine other than wanting to be there all the time. Now, clearly, when those droppings fall on glass, this is concrete or some other surface, it's not pleasant to look at either or to attempt to clean. How do you solve that problems? There are literally reams of ways people have come up with to try and get pigeons out of your life. One that architecturally is used at times are these types of retrofits to ledges to keep them away. Not exactly an architectural enhancement to any building. Now, the team analyzed several options because staff noted, again, there are no villains here, there's no ill intent. Staff, when they discovered this and told us that this was not something that they would prefer that we do, we worked with staff, we collaborated with them. We looked at ways to retrofit the outside of the building. There was no intent to avoid the idea that the DRB approved last time with these building slabs in terms of the issues that staff has identified for you. There are two ways to retrofit this building, and we spent a lot of time looking at them, and the team spent a lot of time looking at it. Architects, contractors, structural engineers. Now, one of the ways to do it is to attach something to the face of the building, not using the concrete slab, but using the window system where you would attach to the window system these architectural embellishments to the exterior of the building. But what we found out was that our glass that we put in was not spec'd to take care of these loads that would be anticipated by adding something to this glass into these window systems. So in terms of the weight bearing and the specs for this glass, for wind and shear and other issues associated with the engineering of these window systems, what was installed could not support these additions to the building. There is just no safe structural way to attach these to the window systems. The second option, which staff identified as well, is to try and attach something to the ends of those 3-inch slabs and create something that projects from the building. Now, I apologize for this detailed diagram, and I'm not going to go into it with great specificity other than to highlight a couple of things. This is that cross-section again. So this would be the outside over here. This would be the inside of the hotel. This would be the floor of a hotel room. This would be the ceiling of a hotel room, floor of a ceiling, floor of a hotel room, and so on. And a bunch of time and energy and money was spent by the team looking at various ways to try and attach to that 3-inch slab that comes out from the building. How could we attach something to it? And what we found out was this method does not work either. And why is that? Because the way this building was constructed is something that I know not even enough to be dangerous about, but something called post-tension concrete slab construction. And what that means is you pour concrete for each floor, and this is the engineer drawing that they used to pour. This is the floor of the building, and this looks like spaghetti and a lot of stuff going on here, and that's because there is a lot of stuff going on here. Inside the floor of the building are plastic tubes that are filled with either 2, 3, or 4 steel cables that have grease inside them. And those steel cables run horizontal and vertical through the floor. It's a crisscross through the floor of the entire building, each floor. And those are the ways that it supports the weight that goes above each floor above it. This is, and I apologize to Mr. Faki, who was laughing at me, who has a doctorate in civil engineering, who is embarrassed at the way I'm trying to describe this, and I apologize in advance for that. The quality of these, I'm sorry it's hard to see, but these are the actual construction of, or photos of the construction of each of a level of the building. And you can see these red plastic tubes that are filled with steel cables that run through the floor of the building, each floor, and then they go the other way. And it performs this, it creates this crisscross network associated with each floor. They then pour concrete on top of it. And when that concrete dries, these steel cables harden and tighten, and it creates the ability to support the weight as each level goes up above it. Why does this matter to us? Why do we care? And the reason for that is because it makes it impossible for us to attach something to that edge. And the reason for that is that if you want to attach something to the slab, as we are looked at lots of different ways to try and do that, at the end of the day, you have to attach something to the slab. You've got to drill into it and attach it. And according to our structural engineer, in order to attach safely something to this slab, you have to use 6 to 8 inch bolts and then drill into the slab, put the retrofit on it, and then put that bolt in there. So those are bolts that are 6 to 8 inches long. Well, if when you're drilling to put those bolts in, you hit one of those post-tension cables, the result is very, very bad. Now, what we found out from our civil engineer is that that spaghetti that runs through each of those floors are anywhere from 2 inches to 4 inches away from the edge of the slab. Edge of slab, 2 inches, you've got a bunch of post-tension cables. 4 inches, you may have a bunch of post-tension cables. Meanwhile, you're trying to drill, a workman is trying to drill 6 to 8 inch deep holes to attach those bolts. What are the odds of them hitting one of those post-tension cables? Fairly high. That is the reason that our structural engineer, I know this is difficult to read, but I'll try and, the punchline is here. To drill into the slab edge would be dangerous, detrimental to the structural integrity, and is strongly recommended that no such drilling occurs. A few other items out of his letter, he says, the pressure used to stress each cable is approximately 30,000 pounds, and each tendon remains alive inside the slab and can snap if damaged. The cables run the entire length of the building, so if a cable is damaged, the entire slab is impacted. The anchors for these tendons are buried about 2 inches from the edge of slab. There are also groups of tendons that run parallel with the slab edge about 4 inches from the edges. Their exact position is unpredictable, which is why his opinion, in no uncertain terms, is you should not drill into that under any circumstances. So in summary and conclusion, everybody would like to try and figure this out and solve it. There is no way to do that. Those barriers include our structural engineer saying, you can't do it, don't do it. The window systems are not designed to support this additional weight and wind load associated with these retrofitting. Even if we could do it, I'm not sure we could find anybody to install it. And the contractor won't guarantee that installation because of all the issues we've just identified. We still have those other practical issues about performing ongoing maintenance. If you have a ledge retrofitted onto the building, you end up with the same problem with birds. In conclusion, Councilmember Durham and members of the board, we certainly appreciate staff and all their efforts. We've worked collaboratively to try and solve this issue. We thank them for their efforts. There are no villains in this case. There are no villains. We played by the rules. Staff played by the rules. The intent on behalf of both staff and the applicant was to comply with the original DRB approval in 2009. Unfortunately, there is no safe or viable way to do that. As such, we would respectfully request that you approve this request in conformance with this recommendation from your staff to approve as well. Happy to answer any questions you may have, and thank you.
What's your response to the statements that were made about the functional aspects of the ledges and sort of stopping reflections from the building and other aspects?
I'm sorry, I thought you were trying to say.
Oh, no.
There were several items that were mentioned by staff in the report. One was the shading of the massing of the building, and we concur that that's a real benefit to having those ledges. That's a benefit, is creating that difference on the exterior of the building. If we could do it, and we wanted to do it, but we can't do it. So that's one aspect of it. The other is the kind of the heat gain and the solar reflection issue. And as staff identified, the quality of the high energy efficient glass is very good. The other thing that my client has done, again, for sustainability and for energy efficiency, is I guess there's some new technology that when the room is unoccupied, the drapes will automatically close during daylight hours, again, to help with energy efficiency and heat gain. So we understand staff's concern. We understand, DRB's original intent in doing this. This is not intended to stick a finger in anybody's eye. It really is, in spite of everybody's good intentions, both staff and ourselves, the design team, the architect, the structural engineer who've worked on this for months, we can't get there, and we don't believe we will be able to get there. We don't like being here any more than you like being here, and we wish we weren't here, but we are. And again, this is something that we have very much played by the rules by filing the original application to do this the right way. So again, happy to answer any questions.
Do you know how old that Hilton building is?
Yes.
You may not know, I'm sure your client does, because it seems that these problems would have shown up in that building.
Councilman Durham, members of the board, when we went through DR, I think that building was about, I recall, about 10 years old when we went through DR back in 2009 when we originally agreed to these. And a lot of those maintenance issues associated with the construction, the potential for rainwater to back, to not all of the concrete poured is level or going down outside. So some of that concrete in some instances was tilted back and the water was pooling, coming back towards the building face. And the implications of that were not overnight. It took many years for those implications to come to the fore. But 10 years in with living with it, my client now recognizes that that's not a good solution. The bird problem, you don't see them in the pretty pictures, but the birds are a problem.
Right. Any more questions? Thank you. We have...
Councilmember Durham, this is Board Member Craig, and I have a couple questions.
Yes. Go ahead.
I'd like to kind of start with Mr. Clough, and I had a couple questions about when the applicant contacted the city regarding the amendment to the design, and what kind of communication was there. And this is a pretty big change to a design that had been in place for, if it was approved. And I had sat on Development Review Board at the time and was happy to approve the design that was identified. So let's see, 5 years later now, 4 years later, a design change is submitted to the city. Was there any communication by the architect with the city before the amendment was submitted?
Councilman Durham, Board Member Craig, and board members, to answer your question, after the initial construction documents were reviewed and permitted, staff did not receive any communication with the applicant regarding potential changes to the building elevations prior to submission of the revision to the construction documents.
Okay, thank you. So this is a pretty significant change, and which would almost, to me, require or at least warrant a call by the architect to say, hey, we're making some significant changes to the design. We'd like to talk about it before designs are even submitted. And that did not happen, it seems like. Is that correct?
Councilmember Durham, Board Member Craig, to my knowledge, that did not occur. Is that correct, Rick? There was no call. That's correct. And I think the rationale for that, and I can't say that it's justified, the rationale for that was you have an out-of-state architect who has no presence in Scottsdale, has not built or developed or done anything in Scottsdale before. And their understanding of the rules were that you do exactly what they did, which is submit an application to the city. A local architect who was more familiar with Scottsdale would have very likely done exactly what Board Member Craig suggests and recommended, which is to reach out to city staff and say, hey, this is what we're considering, let's talk about it. But my guess is that the architect saw that the process was not identified as have a meeting with staff before you submit the application, but submit the application. So that's what they did.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Berry, for the reply. Okay. It'd probably be good maybe moving forward, and with all due respect, I would think that the architect being out of town would want to call the city for exactly that same reason. We're out of town, we don't really know the rules, help us out here. We want to make this revision. And then, so for the applicant, the building in Branson was built in 2007, and it finally had leakage issues that were shown 10, 12 years later, whatever, maybe longer. And I guess my question is, why did the architect design a building the same way he did in 2007 that had a potential for water damming and leakage, cracks, deterioration, and then following up with a contractor who couldn't guarantee the work? I would think that the architect would want to be more proactive with that design and try and remedy those problems, those potential problems, before or submittal for construction drawings.
Councilmember Durham, Board Member Craig, valid points, very much so. What I've subsequently learned is the architect on that Hilton building was not the same architect that designed this building. So it was my client who informed the architect some, in 2022, that they have been having issues with that building. So this architect was not aware of that at the time that he went forward to DRB in 2022. I would also note that the proof in the pudding really is that the contractor would not guarantee the work associated with that slab, irrespective of the Branson, Missouri construction. The contractor did not want to guarantee that work. So it's a little tough to create that construction and do that construction if your contractor says, I'm very familiar as a contractor with these issues, not just in Branson, Missouri, but wherever they do business, and we don't feel comfortable guaranteeing our work. That becomes a problem, whether it's in Branson, Missouri, or Scottsdale, Arizona.
Okay, thank you. Quick question I guess for the owner too. What have they done with the Branson project to remedy the situation? Do they have special cleaning? Did they put up spikes on the ledge? Anything like that? And was any type of electronic bird repeller looked into, I guess, for either the Branson project and or for this project?
Councilmember Durham, Board Member Craig, let me ask Rick Huffman to come up and answer that question.
Thank you, John. Rick Huffman, the owner of HCW, developer of the project. As Mr. Berry said, the project was designed in 2019, submitted to the city. We went through the pandemic. Our company closed for a little while. We're a large national developer, develop all over the United States. So at that time when we came back and we went through the process of looking at the construction, that's when I reached out to him and said, guys, we got a problem in Branson, Missouri on the Hilton that we built there with these ledges, and I want to get them off of there. There's traffic coating that goes over these ledges. You can't just pour concrete. You got to do a traffic coating over it, and you got to caulk the bottom of the seals for the rain to not get in there. We had a lot of water leakage on that building with driving rain. I said, guys, we're out here in monsoon country. And I said, we're going to have issues with these dams on here, and the traffic coating is going to have to be on there. In Branson, we have to literally re-traffic coat those about every 5 years. That hotel he showed you is 18 years old now. And we also, when we had a tornado 11 years ago, hit that building. Unfortunately, when we had to get up on those ledges and look at it, we had spalling. Spalling is deterioration of concrete. And we noticed some deterioration in those slabs, and so we had to patch, when we had those slabs, and re-water coat them to stop those tension cables that can rust on the end of that, which have a bolt on them, with, as he said, with 30,000 pounds of thrust. That became a concern. So we made these changes in about April. We submitted them to the city. Our architect did in May, and we heard back from the city in July. And that was the sequence.
Talk about the birds.
Yeah, the birds are a constant problem. We have to clean. We literally have to.
What do you do to keep them away?
To keep them away, we really haven't done anything to keep them away. We haven't put on spikes because, quite honestly, they're ugly, and we don't want them on our building. And
Some type of electronic.
yeah, we haven't done that. We just clean it all the time, and it's a real pain. But you know, the biggest thing is, as John pointed out, it's cleanliness, it's spalling of concrete. We're there now. We looked at all the options. We did follow the rules. It's only $100,000 savings that we got, and we've spent way more than that anyway. We spent $8.4 million more than what we thought so far on the building.
And that was just on me.
Yeah, yeah, right. No kidding. Yeah. So our intent is that, but it is, and we did. I think an earlier question was the sun. And we did a sun study on the building. There is a sun study done. Those ledges provide about 30 minutes of a little bit of shade in the entire building, because they're only on that west side and the north side. The back side is morning, and there's no ledges. We also did, as John said, we own another company. It's called Power Shades, and every one of these buildings have an electronic shade that's hooked into our Agilysys system, that when that person's not in the room, that shade comes down, and you're going to be noticing that shade is black. It's not white, where other buildings, a lot of them have a blackout shade that's white, and it makes the building look really ugly in the daytime when you see white up or down and this way. So we matched the color of the windows, all hooked it into an electronic system to stop the energy, and it's tied in to there. So we take energy conservation very serious, because these buildings, you know, cost a lot of heat and air. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I had one more question for Mr. Clough. Have you been in, during the process of looking at these possible retrofits, were you in contact with the construction people, and are you satisfied that none of this is feasible?
Councilman Durham and board members, I was involved early on with the design team for the owner, when we were discussing the retrofit options as soon as the issue was identified with the plan revision that was submitted. So aside from meeting with them every so often and reviewing their proposals from a design perspective to see whether or not it would meet the intent of the design and character components of the building, there wasn't any structural analysis or engineering analysis from city staff to confirm whether or not the challenges that the applicant is presenting are valid or not.
Right. Thank you.
This is a great advertisement for developers to use qualified Arizona architects, not out-of-state architects. And I have no intention of turning Mr. Berry into a whipping post for what I consider to be a variety of mistakes. I'm concerned when a project of this size starts construction, when they got to the first floor, and they're pouring cement for the first floor, and I don't know when in that part they decided that they weren't going to build the 20-inch extension, they were going to go to the 3-inch. Did no inspector catch that? I mean, what is the process when something of that size? My understanding is they caught it on the 5th floor. Is that accurate? They'd already poured to the 5th floor, 3rd floor, right? Because that's when we should have been looking at this last May. Had we been looking at this last May, I still don't know what the solution would have been, but I hate going back and trying to fix something that should have been fixed well into that. I think this is a no-win situation. But I also don't want to see ugly little sticks sticking out on the edges, and I think my opinion is we need to just go ahead with this approval and lesson be learned. My other thing is, and this was a silly question I asked 2 or 3 people yesterday, when a case, because we were using an out-of-state architect, Arizona architects know the time that it takes to work with our city. We're understaffed, we're amazing. But is there an auto-respond when a case comes in that says, hey, we're taking 2.5 months to review something, don't do anything until we get back with you? How is the applicant, and in this case, somebody from out of state that should have obviously followed up with at least a phone call, did they get any type of notification that they don't get an immediate response and to maybe sit tight till they do?
Councilman Durham and Board Member Joyner, when an applicant submits for permitting through the City of Scottsdale, that goes into our one-stop shop. They'll get a notice that the documents were received, and then it goes into admin review. If those timeframes are longer than typical, I believe our one-stop shop staff does typically provide information to the applicant with regard to those extended review times. We're talking about a year and a half ago when this would have happened and coming out of COVID. So I know we're doing that now. I don't know what our policies were back then in the one-stop shop for noticing on any delays.
Thank you. I'm going to call this case the Comedy of Errors Burb Poop case. So anyway, that's my question, so thank you.
Any more questions? Anyone? Mr. Kell?
Thank you, sir. Interesting. If I understand correctly, the shading would be effective for 30 minutes out of the day.
Councilmember Durham, Commissioner Ertel, yes, that's what my client described based on the sun study that they did.
And therefore, the glare reduction would be the same time frame. I assume that the glare reduction wouldn't be any longer. I guess I should be looking at Mr. Clough. You mentioned glare reduction, or somebody mentioned glare reduction. that would have the ledges would have a limited benefit on that as well, would they not?
Yes, Councilman Durham, Commissioner Ertel, I believe that's correct with regard to glare reduction and the shading. I don't know if it's exactly 30 minutes, but
Okay, but in that,
as the sun moves, I think that's
Yeah.
in line with expectations. And, the other thing, as I mentioned before, that we're looking at is not just the solar shading, but also the architectural character and design of the
Right.
building that's consistent with our sensitive design guidelines that call for those deep recesses and roof overhangs and things like that for that more of a desert southwest architectural character that we're going for in Scottsdale.
and that did look good. The original design did look good with the ledges sticking out. And I agree with Board Member Joyner that this has been a circus of errors. I forget how you said it. I mean, there's errors all the way around the city. The architect, the builder, those things happen. But I would say it's a serendipitous situation. The ledges are going to collect birds and bird poop. I think it was a good idea at the time to have those ledges because, okay, a little bit of shading, a little bit of glare reduction, and it made the building look good. I think the building looks good, at least as it's shown in the drawing now. I think that, we basically dodged a bullet. We would have had bird poop. We would have had birds. We just didn't think of it at the time. Good idea in terms of shading, in terms of design, or appearance, aesthetics, but bad in terms of birds. So I would say the birds certainly outweigh the aesthetic effect. Whether it can be attached or not, I don't know, but I just think it should not be attached. It's better this way. Thank you.
Mr. Mason?
I have a couple of
I know the
comments for
public
the
comment has been delayed. We'll
staff.
get to you shortly.
The presentation on the negative aspects of these particular extensions in terms of, that they alluded to. Primary concern is the health and safety implications of the concrete spalling as the building ages. Is this something that we should address in future as to doing away with the requirement for, or the idea of concrete slab extensions like this for the reasons stated therein? Because I think if you look at health and safety alone, a 10-year-old building starts spalling on pieces of concrete. It's not a good idea.
Thank you.
Councilmember Durham and Board Member Mason, I'll comment a little bit on that. We can certainly in the future take that into consideration. I think there's many different components that may work into that spalling component and weather tightness of a building. And certainly, the aspects that you have, the environment you have in Branson is much different than you do here in Arizona. So maybe some of those components aren't present here or different. But I think, we can certainly consider that as we look at future applications like this where, the desire, as Mr. Clough mentioned, is to get additional shading, additional architectural detailing and features on these buildings. And perhaps extended slab edge isn't the best way to do that, but we could look at that a little bit more in the future.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
I went and looked at the building myself, and I thought it looked good, even in the way it looks right now without the shading.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree. 20 inches of concrete hanging out there over the edge of the building may not be the best idea. We have two requests for public comment. Christina Shorall and John Shorall. If you could step up to the podium and let us know your name and address, and then speak.
Good afternoon. May it please the Development Review Board, I am John Shorall, S-H-O-R-A-L-L, and I'm here with my wife, Dr. Christina Shorall. We reside at Optima Camelview. 7117 East Rancho Vista is our address, and we've been there now for 13 years. We've very much enjoyed our time in Old Town Scottsdale, and we're compelled by the architecture that is presented not only in our buildings, but also in this structure that we're discussing today. To provide context, The 7117 building is in the southwest corner of Optima. We are at the intersection of East Highland and Goldwater, directly adjacent to this build site. And so, having been there for 13 years and seeing the changes that have occurred in that part of Old Town, we're intimately familiar with this location. And that's the context in which we're here today. I will say that while we have lived at Optima for a considerable period of time, and while we've repeatedly been asked to participate in the governance of the condominium, we do not. We're speaking only for ourselves. We have no role in the governance of Optima. In advance of coming here today, I took the opportunity to secure the papers that have been filed by the parties to this particular petition. I secured them, I read them. Christina and I have reviewed them. And simply put, the staff recommendation synthesizes our feelings about this. I fully concur and support the staff recommendation in this case. And I'm going to take the opportunity, if you'll indulge me, just to read the one sentence which your staff has put together as a recommendation. Their recommended action is as follows. Staff recommends that the Development Review Board approve the Caesars Hotel revisions development proposal per the attached stipulations, finding that the character and design element of the general plan and Old Town character area plan and Development Review Board criteria have been met. That says it all for us. I would say that I'd like to, if I may, just have several points of a personal privilege. The first of those is, while I come to this as a layperson in terms of design and in terms of the construction values that you've been discussing, but as I view this property, and I see it every day, it is elegant in design, and to my way of thinking, it's impressive in its execution.
We know.
You're like a spokesmodel, Christina. That's pretty good. I also would, as a point of personal privilege, just give kudos to the Caesars development team. We have been fully informed of any requests for work outside of normal work hours to accommodate temperature or to accommodate traffic. And at each step of this development, we have been kept in the loop as much as we chose to, and there has been constant communication with the development team. And then finally, I think for us, the efforts that have been undertaken by Macerich, both the energy and the force that they have put behind their efforts at Scottsdale Fashion Square has been significant, and it has been ongoing. The vision of Macerich in our immediate neighborhood has enhanced our lifestyle dramatically. It has provided us with attractions, with increased retail, and with opportunities to dine at some very, very good restaurants. All of this is a density which has, in many ways, allowed us to have vitality. And my time is up, so thank you very much for your attention to that comment.
And I would just like to say, I selected Optima to live. Have everybody seen Optima?
Could you move closer to the microphone, Mrs. Sherrill?
I selected Optima because it's stunningly beautiful. It's 11 buildings on 14 acres. It's the largest green condominium in the world when it was built. It has an amazing number of birds. So I think the decision to be sensitive to that population is probably a good idea. We probably have more aviary activity than anywhere in the Scottsdale area because of the thousands of trees we have. And one of the things I've noticed about this site is they have been very neat and clean. Optima is manicured exquisitely. So to be able to look across the street and see another property that is also managed that way has been very satisfying. So,
And then finally, thank you for your efforts. We lived for up until 13 years ago in the East, and our move to Scottsdale has been really well received by us, by our families, by all of our friends. It's a lovely place to be, and we've really enjoyed our residency.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councilmember Durham, I apologize, but I understand there was one other card that was submitted. It may not have made its way to you, but someone tapped me on the shoulder and said they also wanted to speak. Is that accurate?
Was a card submitted for, I don't think I got the card on let me check here. Okay. Yes, sorry. I think it snuck up here while I wasn't looking. Mr. Hamid Salari, if you would approach the podium and line yourself up with the microphone. And if you could give us your name and address.
Good afternoon. My name is Hamid Solari, and I'm a proud resident of Scottsdale for over 30 years. I happen to also live at 7121 East Rancho Vista Drive, so we're neighbors. So I pretty much concur with everything that our neighbors mentioned. They pretty much want to say the same things. Normally, when a resident comes to comment about a project like this size, they always have complaints because, you know, the builders are doing something wrong or not, you know, living with all the promises that is made and become nuisance. But since this project started, we get in constant emails of blocking the road, working extra. So it's been a pleasure looking at this beautiful building going up. I think the aesthetics is beautiful. I walk to across the street where my gym is in the morning. I see it every day going up. Everybody's extremely detailed, organized. So to me, seeing this beautiful building going up, it's been a pleasure, besides the fact that it's increased the value to our home at Optima. So had a breakfast meeting with David Hovey, which is the builder of Optima, this morning, and he's been a big architect around town and building all these beautiful Optima buildings. We were complimenting how beautiful this building looks. So it seems to me it's been some kind of minor communication at some point that this ledge thing became a kind of fall in the cracks, I think. But I think we all believe that it wasn't anything by attention, and the building is beautiful. We love it as a residents. I think it brings more people and businesses to our community. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Council.
Council member.
Mr. Key. Councilmember.
I just a couple of things here, going back to this case, going back to blaming the architect who's not here in the room today. So a couple of things I would like to go back to. I think, you know, like in big scheme of things, there was a builder, there is an architect, there is an owner, and you guys took the risk to do something outside of the approval. Now what happened, you went through it, the architect could take some of the blame, but there is other part of the team that, I mean, knew this decision going forward. The same discussion is from our staff here, when this show up in May, and we're talking about it here after 6 months, which I don't know, there should be a way where we can expedite the process to talk about project under construction. Now, this been said, being the civil engineer, I do agree with the applicant, drilling into the slab now is almost impossible. I mean, especially when there is a post-tension cable on it. And honestly, if this case show up at the original DRB with no ledge, I would probably vote for it. Because, I mean, I see, you know, like the ledge as an issue, and probably aesthetically, if it's just 30-minute shade, and I don't see that much difference in the aesthetics, I would probably vote for it. And probably this is why I will support it today. But at the same time, going back to setting this as a standard for the future, I mean, there was a miscommunication happen from the whole team. And I hope this doesn't happen in the future for other projects. At the same time, I think, Mr. Carr, I would like, and this, we've seen this in some other project, different discussion, but maybe discuss in a way, how can we expedite review through construction? Because review through construction should be completely different than review for permitting purposes, because you have building under construction, you have $120 million project under construction. Again, different discussion. This been said, again, I don't mind with the building with no ledge as I see it, and I will support it for this reason, because I would have voted for it this way when it first came through the RB. So, thank you.
Councilman Durham,
Yes.
may I make a motion?
Councilmember
Is anybody
Joyner?
else going to say anything? I'll make a motion.
Anybody else? Yes, please.
Okay. I move to approve 30 DR 2019 number 2 Caesars Republic Scottsdale per the staff recommendation stipulations after finding that the development application meets the Development Review Board criteria.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve case number 30-DR-2019, number 2, Caesar Republic Scottsdale. Would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Durham,
Yes.
Board Member Joyner,
Yes.
Board Member Craig,
Yes.
Board Member Faki,
Yes.
Board Member Mason,
Yes.
Commissioner Ertel.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much for your time.
All right. Thank you.
Councilman Durham, before you go on to the next project,
Yes.
I need to recuse myself,
Okay.
so I'm going to say goodbye,
right.
since that's the last agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Brand, are you back on?
I'm back on. Thank you very much,
All right.
Council.
Thank you. Our next item on the regular agenda is 12 PP-2022 AFB development. And let's begin with our staff report.
Good afternoon, Councilman Durham, Commissioner Ertel, members of the board. I'm Meredith Tessier with the Planning Department. The case before you today is AFB Development 12 PP 2022. Please note this item is on the regular agenda today as city staff has received correspondence both in opposition and support of this case. And mouse now? Keyboard wasn't working. Okay. Before you is the context slide where you see the subject site located at the northwest corner of East Bell Road and North 94th Street as highlighted in yellow. Before you is a close-up aerial with surrounding uses that include single-family residential to the north. To the east, we have Wingate Ranch, and to the south, we have multifamily as well as Westworld. And lastly, to the west, we have the City of Scottsdale sports fields. Really? Bear with me here. I can't. There we go. Okay, today the applicant's requesting Development Review Board approval for a new 52-lot subdivision comprised of a clubhouse located at the southwest corner of the site, a gatehouse located along North 94th Street. In addition, the applicant's requesting Development Review Board approval for cuts and fills greater than 8 feet, as well as amended development standards to allow flag lots, which are asterisks in red, so that only pertains to 3 lots. Vehicular site access will be provided along North 94th Street. Pedestrian circulation will be enhanced along both street frontages as well as internal to the site with some future and planned trails. The case is stipulated to provide an enhanced pedestrian crossing across North 94th Street to have safe connections to the Belrose Sports Complex fields. Additionally, the site will be dedicating scenic buffer setback along both street frontages, as well as natural area open space within tracks and easements to protect the wash corridors and natural environment that you have there on the site. Sorry, the slides keep moving forward quickly. Here we have their proposed landscape plan where they will be incorporating salvage material as well as new desert landscaping, both along the perimeter of the site as well as internal to the site. Here we have the color building elevations of the proposed gatehouse, color building elevations of the clubhouse, which are consistent with the City of Scottsdale sensitive design principles, as well as some color elevations of the proposed walls, combination of solid walls, wrought iron walls, and retaining walls. And lastly, I'll conclude my presentation with a perspective slide. That concludes my presentation. The applicant, Dale Garden and Alex Stedman, have also prepared a presentation for you this afternoon. Thank you. The mouse wheel is very fast. I'm going to use the keyboard. I was going to move this.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, Councilmember Durham, members of the board. My name is Alex Stedman. I'm with RVI Planning and Landscape Architecture. I wanted to first, before we get started, give a few introductions to our team. Maybe. Tricky. There we go. Whoop. Okay. Here in the front row, we've got, I'm proud to be a part of this team. We've got some really great individuals that have come together for this project. I first want to introduce Mike Graham with First American Homes. Mike's been doing work both here and in Utah, Paradise Valley, North Scottsdale, for about the last 30 years. And very experienced in custom home design. Silverleaf is one of the communities he's worked extensively in. Dale Gardone is our architect for the project, and Dale was the lead designer in projects like Silverleaf and in DC Ranch and Festival. So a good storied history here in North Scottsdale. Also, Jason Berm with Kimley Horn, our civil engineer on the project. And then finally, someone that probably needs no introduction, Don Hatter, civil servant, now retired. I think his work with the city and in planning in general has spanned about 3 or 4 decades. So thank you, Don, for being here. So not to reiterate too much of Meredith's presentation, but I did want to hit a couple of highlights here with our site plan. This is going to be a single-family luxury residential community. 52 lots, as Meredith mentioned, with lot sizes that range between about 11,000 square feet all the way up to 27,000 square feet. So in acreage-wise, that's about 1/3 of an acre up to about 2/3 of an acre, half acre at the upper end. There are 2 different lot types or product types within the community. There is the kind of the darker yellow color. Those are villa home sites. Those will be the 11,000 or larger lot size, and they're more of a traditional build with privacy walls between homes in the sides and the rears. The lighter yellow, there are 32, we're calling those estate homes. So those start at about 18,000 square foot, run again almost up to 30,000 square feet. Those will be more typical of development envelopes where you'll have landscaping behind the lots and down the sides of the lots. And so there's a diversity of product within the neighborhood. One thing I did want to mention with regards to the zoning standards, this is R17 zoning. That carries from back in, I believe, the late 80s. The R17 development standards allow for 5-foot side yards, but we are proposing our homes to be slightly larger than that. Our minimum side yard setbacks on this will be at least 7 feet, oftentimes much larger than that because of the variability of the lot width throughout the community. I know that's a kind of an important issue about spacing between homes. We have at least 14 to 15 feet between those home sites. There's another perspective shot of the community there. You can see the McDowells off to the east, proximity to the Sonoran Preserve. It's a great site. The density on this site, as allowed by the zoning, would be as much as 4 dwelling units to the acre. This community is coming in at much, much less, at 1.3 dwelling units to the acre. 7,000 square foot homes would be allowed under the existing zoning. As I mentioned earlier, our lot sizes start at much larger than that, 11,000, again, all the way up to almost 30,000 square feet. So there are no comprehensive amendments to development standards being requested here today. Only a clarification about those 3 flag lots, as Meredith pointed out earlier. We do have the single gated access point off of 94th Street, which is there along the left side of the graphic here. That will be a guardhouse. Large perimeter buffers along both 94th Street and along Bell Road. Minimums of 50 feet. Oftentimes we are deeper than that. And then one of the significant things from a pedestrian mobility standpoint is we've agreed to put in a flashing beacon crosswalk there right across the street from our project entry, leads our residents right into that park there. So not just for our residents, but for any residents of DC Ranch to the north, it creates a much safer avenue across that busy street. So we're excited about that element. And then in addition to that, we've got a community clubhouse with a broad array of amenities and gathering space, and we'll look at that here in a second. And then maybe finally I'll leave it. We do share a common edge with DC Ranch to our north, and we're working on some things as we speak to make that transitional buffer in terms of landscaping much more aesthetic and pleasing. So we're working with some neighbors there to do that. This slide here highlights some of the pedestrian elements, and without spending too much time here, we do have trails that lead to the Riata Wash off to our east side. We have pathways that lead to 94th Street and a broader network of trails and sidewalks beyond our project. We also have interior pathways and sidewalks that are shaded because they're detached from the street curb. So it allows for trees to be planted between the curb and the individual lots and creating a much better pedestrian experience. This is a rendering of our arrival guardhouse or gatehouse. Very nice modern design, formal planting upon arrival. This is a plan view here of what that would look like, as well as the floor plan for that building. And then here's your standard elevation of both the front and the side. This is a rendering of the community clubhouse, a really, really nice facility, kind of the gem of this community. As you can see just from this rendering, a lot of those amenities, the pool, the activity lawn, which you don't see are pickleball courts that are located behind the building there. Those pickleball courts are screened, strategically placed at the intersection of Bell and 94th Street. We've got a lot of traffic noise there. Pickleball, we all know about those noise issues, so we believe that to be the perfect location for that. This is a plan view looking down. You can see the activity lawn there to the right side, the pickleball courts, as I alluded to, there to the left, and then the building with thoughtful orientation to the McDowell Mountains and long views down into the valley from that building. This here, the building elevations of that, you can see the amount of glass, again, to capture those orientations, those long views. Really special design here. And then finally, just very quickly, I wanted to acknowledge that we've been doing a lot over the months that we've been, almost years that we've been involved in this project. We've been in close coordination with our neighbors, with the DC Ranch Homeowners Association. Our feeling on that is that those discussions have been very positive and progressive and transparent. And without saying too much more, I know Chris Irish with the Homeowners Association is here today and will be speaking. So with that, that'll conclude the presentation. I'd like to turn it back over to the board. We're happy to answer any questions, and we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Your map, the pedestrian map, showed a pedestrian gate at the entrance on the east side. Yeah. Is that going to be locked, or is it going to be open?
Yeah, we would anticipate that to be a locked gate. There really isn't a formal trail improvement there yet. And it's more, actually the existing condition is more of a berm. So we're a little unsure of what the future improvement lies there, but that would be a gated locked gate.
Yeah, I see what you mean. There's no clear trail over to the east. Thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember Joyner?
Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for the positioning of your pickleball courts, so we don't have to mitigate 24 hours of pickleball noise. And I was excited to see that. I think your project is beautiful. But I do have a couple of questions. Is the 7-foot side yard being stipulated? So that's going into the record, is that correct?
Councilmember Durham and Board Member Joyner, I don't believe that requirement is currently stipulated. The standard is typically 5 feet.
I know.
The applicant is asking for, is saying they're going to do more. I guess they can note if they are willing to be stipulated to that.
Councilmember Durham and Board Member Joyner, if I may, I'd like to introduce Dale Gardone. He can speak to this issue.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, so Dale Garden with Dale Garden Design, 20885 North 90th Place. With respect to the question, we have as much motivation or interest in providing greater distances between the houses. But as you can see, we're the farthest from a cookie cutter straight rectangle project. So imagine that we have homes that are rectangular and that in some cases a corner may touch the 5 feet just to fit some of the more odd shaped properties. So we are working within the R17 district, which allows for 5 foot, but our homes are all designed for 7 feet and greater. And in many of the cases, especially the larger lots, we're 120 feet. So no, we wouldn't want it stipulated because that literally could be the prevention of a house fitting on a lot. And so it would, but I can assure you that that's like literally a corner point. And all the rest are 7-foot minimums.
Okay. I spent 6 months of my career mitigating 5-foot
yes.
setbacks. So,
we have the same appreciation.
Thank you. And I have one question about landscaping, and I'm sure my coworker, Mr. Craig, is laughing as I'm talking if he was still on. I was looking at the landscaping for the trees, and I saw 24-inch box trees that had a 3-inch diameter, and I saw 24-inch box trees that had a 1.5-inch diameter. That's a huge difference because one of the aesthetics of your proposal is how beautifully and lush it looks. So could you explain why there's the differentiation between the two diameters of the trees? Because I've been told not to ask for larger boxes, but to ask for larger diameters. So that's what I'm doing.
It's a great question, and I think that as we progress through the construction phase, we'll be looking at two things. One, curating kind of larger trees. We'll try to maximize those tree diameters. One of our intentions is on opening day for this community that we provide that sort of more mature look. And so I believe we'll be slanted more towards the selection of larger materials. The second opportunity for us is to either maintain or to salvage and replant as much mature vegetation, which oftentimes is much larger than the boxes we find at the nurseries.
But your application indicated that there wasn't a lot of landscaping in existence to transplant. Did I misread that, or?
Yeah, and so if I could elaborate on that too. One of the things that has happened with this site is it's been largely cut off from historic flows, upstream flows. One of the reasons for that is the levee that exists along our eastern edge that sort of contains the Riata Wash. The second is, and this is no fault of DC Ranch, but some of those ephemeral washes that historically ran through that property prior to development were cut off. Now, as you can see, we've got a great natural wash corridor that runs right through the middle, and that does convey meaningful flows. But a lot of the smaller washes have been cut off. And as a result, the vegetation on site today, lackluster.
Right.
They just don't get the water that they used to. And so this is an opportunity for us to, through irrigation, limited irrigation and NAOS, of course, but in non-irrigated areas, to bring in material that sort of recreates what may have been kind of the pre-development conditions. So we'd like to do this. This is going to be a high-end community, high quality, and I think we'll do our best to bring in plant material that matches that aesthetic.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember Mason?
I have a question. You've talked about the fact it's indirectly related to what we're talking about here, but you present a very beautiful community, typically it's going to be a high-end, family-oriented community. And this may be premature to point out, but are there considerations in your homeowner's documents or in your deed documents to place restrictions on on use as vacation or short-term rentals?
Sure. Dale, do you want to?
Well, to be honest, that's our next step. With your approvals here, we get to go on to the next levels of detail, both in engineering and in documentation for HOA restrictions and all restrictions for that matter. So honestly, that's not anything that we've been working on currently. We're here at a design level, trying to reach approval to take our next steps into detail.
Understood. Thank you.
Commissioner Artel?
Thank you, sir. You have alluded to conversations with DC Ranch. I noted in the staff write-up that it said, or at least I'm probably paraphrasing, DC Ranch wants a path along 94th from Bell. And you mentioned something about that, but can you clarify for me, are they getting, and first of all, I'm not suggesting that they should be able to dictate to you what you do with your property. I'm just curious. Are they getting the path along 94th from Bell that they were interested in?
So Councilmember Durham, Board Member Ertel, great question. It's something we've been actively engaged in this just in light of a little bit new information, at least for me, in the last couple of weeks. So I think I have a good answer for you, which is we did not, there was a point in time during our application process that we did not show a trail extension up and north of our project entry going up to DC Ranch. The reason for that was because there was no trail to meet that exists in DC Ranch. And so it would be a trail that would lead pedestrians to nowhere. They'd end up in the shoulder of the road or wandering into the community, and it's a condition that just wasn't amenable to anybody. So what we had done on our plans is shown an easement for the future construction of that trail at such time that DC Ranch met us to allow for that connection to be made. We've learned, I think, in the last couple of weeks, at least I have learned this in the last couple of weeks, that the DC Ranch Homeowners Association, through their capital improvements program, has identified funding for that segment of the trail on their property. So I think that opens the door for us to coordinate and say, the timing may be right to now build our segment as they build their segment. So it wasn't as if we were trying to avoid the construction of that segment, it was just about timing.
Okay, yeah, and I didn't mean to suggest that you were trying to avoid.
No, I know.
So right now you're providing an easement, and you're saying that when DC Ranch gets their end ready, then you'll install might not be the right word, but I'll use it anyway, install that pathway?
I think that our timeframes may line up perfectly, as you know, we've got a little bit of time here before we start construction. That allows DC Ranch, and I don't want to speak for DC Ranch, Chris may allude to this, but I think the timing may line up perfectly to allow us to do that. In the meantime, we have a 12-foot easement, public easement.
Thank you.
Councilman.
Commissioner Faki?
Thank you, Councilman. Just a quick question. Overall, I really like the layout. I think the applicant did a really good job here. But some question, do you have a secondary access on this? I mean, usually we've seen, you have more than 50 lots. I don't see it on this exhibit, but probably you have it somewhere for emergency. Where is your secondary access?
Sure. Council Member Durham and Board Member Faki, it was something we talked about early on. Bell Road would have been the likely location for that. It's a very difficult road just due to traffic speeds and things like that. So from a standpoint of a secondary access there, it wasn't desirable for our design team. It was something we had discussed with the city about needing that second point of access. We ultimately agreed that it wasn't a needed item. We do have an entry that is divided enough that essentially it, even though it's in the same place, it does allow for kind of two flows of traffic, ingress and egress. And in an emergency, those could be reversed, to allow traffic in and out.
But my understanding, even with this, the fire code requires secondary access. I guess staff could answer this. I never seen it without one usually. Even when you have a 20 feet drive, usually have a secondary access, I guess, but I may be.
Councilman Durham, board members, Board Member Faki, the fire department did review this case, and they didn't, to my knowledge, they didn't request a secondary access. And I apologize, we don't have any representative here from Fire and Safety. Are you familiar with that? Yeah. Okay.
Good afternoon, Phil Kircher with Transportation Department. Normally I don't speak for the fire department, but I've been doing this for a while, and since I've been with the city, for these gated entrances, as Mr. Stedman said, when you have two separated by a median, and those have to be 20 feet wide, the fire department accepts that as a secondary entrance. Also, as you know, the city has a fire sprinkler ordinance, so combined with the fire sprinkler ordinance where every home will be sprinklered, they accept this type of entry design to meet their standards or their access requirements.
Okay, good to know. So this been said, and going back to the entrance, I don't see dimension between the street and the gate here. And usually, obviously, looking for like 75 feet, my understanding from your side. Does this meet the requirement of 75 feet from the roadway to the gate?
Board Member Faki, yes, it does.
So isn't the gate, though, the call-out you have, isn't just closer to the street?
Yeah, the gate is actually very close to the right-hand side of this graphic here. We have two rolling gates here. So we have ample distance from 94th Street to that gate.
But where is your call-out to get into the gate, like your call box?
Oh, the call box would be, well, we do have a guard that would be in it, but when the guard is not there, the call box would be located on this island here.
And is it 75 feet from the guard box, I guess, just for stacking, or? Okay, so does this show 75 feet? Again, I cannot tell, obviously, but does this meet 75 feet?
Thanks, Dale. Yeah, for reference, Board Member Faki, this dimension here is 130 feet. So the short answer is yes, we do have the required stacking distance.
Okay, awesome. If you don't mind going back to the plan before. No, the one that you were showing, the pedestrian connection.
Right, let me make sure I'm moving in the right direction here. There we go.
Over here. So between lot like 34 and 42 and 35 and 40, you have this landscape going on over there. I'm assuming some drainage way. Is it?
That's correct. There is a drainage easement.
Okay. So in this one here, is it an easement? Is it part of the lot, or do you have a tract for this one?
That is in that particular location between say Lot 34 and 42, that is on lot within an easement.
Okay. So, and again, this is another thing for staff, I guess. Usually when we've seen those drainage easement always been put in and tracked, it's just like a different situation here just because of back drainage. Because usually you're going to have a wall here. Your wall going to be to the easement line, or is it going to be the center of the drainage, I guess? I don't know if you have a blow-up of it you could share.
We do have a wall plan, but just for simplicity's sake, it would be along the back of this yellow defined area, our construction envelope. That would be the extent of the rear wall. So we have about a 20 to 30 foot gap between backing walls.
And again, I'm fine with easement. I really do. I think easement works the same way. I've just kind of like asked for consistency. Usually when we've seen it, a lot of application, we get sometime requests that we want to see a tract, not an easement. So I'm just curious because this could affect all of the lot calculation too. So I don't know if staff has an answer on this or not.
I apologize, I was looking at the plan. What is your question?
For the drainage piece of it, we've been seeing staff always pushing to have a tract instead of an easement for drainage between lots. And I guess my point is, for consistency, is the tract, like an optional? And can every applicant do an easement? Because as someone who does work with the city, sometimes we get confused, so I'm just confirming.
Sorry, thank you. Councilman Durham, Development Review Board, Faki, a tract is optional. It's just whether or not how it works with the overall site design. And so the applicant can certainly chime in on whether or not a tract would accommodate that. Now, their lots are significantly larger, so it wouldn't impact their minimum lot size.
Okay, so and with this tract here, because I see the same thing between lot 45 and 80, or not 80, 50. I'm getting old, man. My sight is just like, but between 45 and 50, this seems like your backyard drainage is different there. You're not doing the same concept.
It's Board Member Faki, it's very similar. That also is on lot with an easement between the two. We do not have a tract in that location.
Any reason why there is no vegetation, I guess, here, but there is vegetation on the north side?
Yeah, I think we will have vegetation in there is the short answer. It really came down to an issue of who's maintaining that, whether it's the property owner or the HOA.
Okay, so it's going to be similar, consistent situation, what you have there. You have some view fence, an open area, 20 to 30 feet. It's going to be the same thing
Exactly.
along those edges of these lots. Okay. Last thing. Again, I really like the layout, and I like how you cross the wash on the north and the south. I think make it really nice, kind of like more, excluded. So I really like it. So I'm in support of the project. So good job. Thank you.
Any other questions? Questions from Mr. Craig's not here. Mr. Brand?
No, I have no additional questions other than what has already been brought up. Thank you.
All right. We have two from the public who wish to speak, Chris Irish and Jeanette Arata. If you would approach the podium and give your name and address.
Okay, I was trying to get you a better there.
Councilmember Durham, Commissioner Herkel, and members of the board, thank you for your time today. My name is Chris Irish, and the address is 25551 North Pima Road, Suite 180. I serve as DC Ranch's Director of Public Affairs, and I'm here today representing the 7,000 plus Scottsdale citizens that live in DC Ranch. As you know, the northern border of this property abuts DC Ranch. And I wanted to start today by first acknowledging the development team for working so closely with DC Ranch. They very patiently explained the various portions of their application for us. They listened to our concerns, and most importantly, they implemented many changes that addressed our concerns. However, there are two things that aren't in the current drawings that DC Ranch would like you to stipulate as part of your approval today. And the first one we've already touched on, which is we're asking that they reinstate the pathway along 94th Street from Bell Road up to their northern boundary. It was in their initial drawings, and then as they mentioned, there is a small portion on our property missing a link that would then tie into a trail that goes through all of DC Ranch. So we are more than happy to put our piece of the trail in the future, and so we would like the commitment that their path is going to go in also. And the second item is that we want to ensure that trees will be placed along the northern border of the property. You can see it on this drawing. There are a lot of trees along the northern border, but when you go to their landscape plan, those trees aren't there. So this is sort of a drawing that's a little bit deceiving, although they do have a disclaimer down in the bottom that it is not their landscape plan. And we had a meeting just this week with the development team, and they stated that they're willing to both put the 94th Street path in and to put trees along the north boundary. So we're asking that you put that as part of your stipulation, because players do change, circumstances change, so if it's stipulated today, we'll feel much better that it's going to happen. And with these two items added in, the DC Ranch Community Council is very supportive of their proposal. It's a very quality project, and we feel it's going to be a good neighbor for DC Ranch. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Jeanette Arata.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeanette Arata, and I'm one of the DC Ranch residents that borders the property just to the north. So if you look at the plot map, that northwest corner is the one that I'm concerned about. My house is the furthest to the left or to the west in DC Ranch. As Chris said, the developer's been very helpful with us walking through this, helping us understand what the development's going to be. I can only speak for myself, but given the other alternatives that could have gone onto this property, I'm thrilled to see something of this quality. And as Chris stated, my concern was we saw trees here. If you see plots 1 through 5 over there, there's a number of trees between the one-story DC Ranch houses on the north and the plots that are going in. And in the detailed landscaping plots, those trees had all disappeared. So we certainly are concerned about privacy and would like to see some vegetation go into that area. And then my request is for those plots 1 through 5, I would also like to see those be restricted to one-story homes, again, to make sure that they match the neighborhood to the north, which is 1 story in that area. Thank you.
If I could ask the applicant, there is what's marked as the, I think it's as a 6-foot unpaved trail along 94th Street, right?
Commissioner Durham, that's correct, 6 foot unpaved.
So is that what DC Ranch is asking for? So I think that's already, I'm not sure we need to stipulate it because that trail's really already there, or are they asking for more? A paved trail, possibly?
I think the point of clarification here is that we did have a drawing that had removed that segment, and so it may be a little ambiguous. We'd be more than happy to oblige on the construction of that trail if we need to add it as a stipulation.
Okay, thank you. And what about the second stipulation on the trees?
Yeah, that's a great one. We're completely on board with that. The reason we had not shown that in our preliminary landscape and design is there was a conveyance channel there, and I think we were nervous about putting material where water may be flowing. I've since had a conversation with our civil engineer. The water is minimal through there. It's not moving very quickly. Certainly would accommodate trees. And so we are more than happy to plant trees in there. We'll be meeting with the neighbor to resolve exactly what types of trees and where those would be located, but there's no pushback from us on that.
And what's your position about the one-story houses along the 1 through 6 lots, I guess?
Councilmember Durham, first of all, the homes are being designed as 1 and 2 stories, so we have a combination of both, which is actually consistent with DC Ranch. There are 1 and 2 story homes on our northern boundary, and that community has the same configurations of selection of 1 and 2 story homes. So we are prepared to do what we're doing, but not restrict lot 1 to 5 as a 1 story only.
All right, thank you.
Is DC Ranch matching the trees that you're putting in?
Councilmember Drum and Councilmember Ertl, the current situation is there are trees on their side of the wall, so to speak. There's actually a 10-foot buffer along the DC Ranch area. We're actually providing a 20-foot buffer, so twice as large to be able to accommodate vegetation and drainage as discussed. So our goal is to work with them for the health of the trees that are there. Some of them maybe not have been maintained over the years on that side. So we're going to work with them to try to get the trees trimmed in good, healthy condition on their side, us add, and try to make a line invisible there between their 10-foot and our 20-foot. We're looking for a nice naturalized landscape.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Councilmember Durham.
Yes.
I just wanted to weigh in on the trail discussion. And just for background, these projects do occur over years, so there's discussions and changes with the STIPs and things. But I believe where we ended up, and Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, but we had originally were requiring them to build the trail along their frontage, and they were concerned because it would have created a dead end at the north end of their property because the trail doesn't exist to the north. So what we had agreed to was that they would build the trail up to their entrance to the pedestrian crossing that Alex mentioned, the crosswalk over to the park. So that's the way it's stipulated, that they will build it to that crossing, and then if DC Ranch or the city comes in to build the portion to the north, we would connect it down to that point. So it's in the stipulations already that they'll build it to their entrance essentially to that crosswalk.
But it does go north from the crosswalk up to the DC Ranch, right?
That would happen with the DC Ranch Trail Project, or the city would do it at some point.
But I'm
Eventually it will go north, yes.
from the guardhouse up to DC Ranch.
If I might just add to that, the easement is in place. There's a 12-foot easement. So we agreed with transportation, let's put the easement there to allow the trail to occur.
Okay.
We were asked actually to pull the trail off for a while until there's an answer here.
Okay.
And upon hearing DC Ranch putting it into their 2025 capital improvements, that allows us to say, okay, at that time period that we spoke of, we can make this connection. So the easement is there. This graphic is indicating our commitment to the future unpaved trail.
Yes.
So we think it's all good, and we're willing to do it as part of our improvements.
Right, thank you. Any further questions? Yes, please.
Move to, let's see, make sure I got the right one. Yes, move to approve case 12 PP 2022, including amended development standards, walls within the desert scenic setback, cuts and fills greater than 8 feet, and a community clubhouse per the staff recommended stipulations after finding that the development application meets the Development Review Board criteria.
I'll second it.
And I think yes, Council?
I think there was also a request
to add the trees?
Add to the development plan something, so we've got that typed down here.
Yeah, I think there was a request, council member, to add an additional stipulation to acknowledge that the developer is going to construct that portion of the trail north of the entryway to the northern extent, northern boundary of the property, as well as adding additional trees along the northern boundary of the property.
I think that Director Kirchner said that was in there, the trail. So I think that, he said that was covered. So I think we're set.
We're good? Okay. So maybe it's just additional trees then on the northern boundary.
Yes.
Okay,
That's acceptable to you?
yes.
And Ms. Joyner, acceptable to you? All right. With those stipulations, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Durham,
Yes.
Vice Chair Brandt,
Yes.
Board Member Joyner,
Yes.
Board Member Faki, Board Member Mason,
Yes.
Commissioner Ertel.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if there's nothing more remaining before the board, we stand adjourned.